School leadership remains a hot topic. School administration is a difficult task on its own, let alone all the additional tasks and responsibilities added in the past few years. This role becomes even more difficult without clear definitions and expectations. Distinguishing between a principal and a leader is a good first step towards progress. Let's take a look at defining and clarifying school leadership. So let's look at defining and clarifying school leadership. We're going to look at the importance of the distinction. We're going to define what a principal is in general, what a leader is in general, and practices of school leaders. So why is this distinction important? Why does it matter to distinguish between principal and leader? Well, schools need both principals and leaders. Titles don't equal leadership. So just because you have the title of principal does not by default make you a leader, and vice versa. Just because you're not a principal doesn't mean you're not a leader. So the distinction does matter. There's a balance between management and inspiration. So a principal doesn't necessarily have to inspire by definition. However, they will manage, but a leader can do both. And then it impacts the culture and outcomes. When a person, when there's no distinction present, a person operating as a principal who is called a leader creates a false sense of culture, and ultimately it impacts the outcome. So distinguishing between the two is very important. So what is a principal? A formal administrative role responsible for daily operations. It's a role that's given by either the school district or the school if it's a private school, and the authority comes from the position. So what are their core roles? They're head administrator, instructional supervisor, they're policy enforcer, and district liaison. When you look at the resume or the requirements for a principal, you will see some variation of these four topics embedded in the roles and responsibilities. So what are their responsibilities? They manage the budget and resources, they conduct staff evaluations, they ensure compliance, and they ensure safety and discipline. So these are managerial responsibilities. Notice we haven't, traversed into the leadership aspect, which we'll do in a second, but these are all managerial positions. There's no quote unquote special skills necessary. You just have to understand how to manage budgets and resources, evaluate staff, compliance. There are vital skill sets here, but we haven't transitioned into that bigger picture yet. So what are their key traits? They stay organized, they're decisive, they understand policy knowledge, and they have strong management skills. So now let's traverse into what a leader is. So what's a leader? Someone who influences and inspires others, and their influence comes from trust. And one of the key things about leadership is true leadership develops other leaders. So the person that does everything and people follow them, but the people that follow them can't do anything without the leader being present, that's not a real leader. That's a pseudo leader. Okay, so we want to make that distinction as well. So a leader is someone who influences, inspires others, and their influence comes from trust. And we'll answer this question later. Can a principal be a leader? Sneak peek, spoiler alert. Yes, a principal can be a leader. A principal can be a leader, but a leader doesn't have to be a principal. So what are the leader core roles? They're vision setters. They are cultural builders, they are change agents, and they are coaches. So these core roles are different than what we saw from that of a principal. So what are their responsibilities? They drive innovation, they build trust, they communicate the vision, and this is what we were talking about earlier, they empower others. Okay, so I don't need a title in order to do the things mentioned here as the responsibilities for a leader. I can do this as a emerging leader, meaning I have a different role within the building, but people come to me because I drive innovation. I build trust with them. I communicate what vision we have, and I empower them to be leaders themselves. So what are their key traits? high emotional intelligence, they have empathy, there's communication, and there's integrity. So what's the difference? A principal manages systems, a leader inspires people. So can a principal be a leader? And the answer is yes, but not all principals are leaders. And this distinction is important, especially for district training, especially for cultural training, as far as the within the actual building. But the most effective principals lead with vision, okay? So when we talk about training principals for the next generation or even presently, we have to make this distinction so that the role of the principal does not get skewed with the term school leader, okay? And this is important because the expectations change. If you're expecting somebody just to manage what exists, then the principal fits that role. But if you're looking for somebody to take you to that next level, see the big picture, and affect change in your building, you need a leader to do that. The principal role in itself is a managerial position. You have to train that principal in order to be an effective leader. Giving them the title alone does not make them a school leader. So what are the practices of a school leader? Well, they inspire a shared vision. They model the way. They don't just tell people what to do, they show them what to do by their own actions. They challenge the process. This one, number 3, is probably the biggest hindrance to most principals transitioning into leaders, because that challenging of process means you are putting your job on the line. When you challenge the very people that hired you, you're putting your job on the line. That's a big risk. And practically speaking, most people aren't going to do that just for the sake of doing it. You enable others to act, meaning you empower them. You put them in position with the skills and resources necessary to lead in their own way as well. And you encourage the heart. You encourage them, you celebrate wins, you build trusting relationships in order to understand what makes, the people in my building tick. So that way I can encourage them and motivate them when things get tough. And it's a balancing of all of these that is what makes a school leader a leader. Okay, it's the balancing of these 5 traits that allows them to lead in an effective and purposeful manner. This here, this chart shows, and you can take a closer look at it. You can pause the recording, zoom in, 4K, whatever you need to do, but balancing the practice. So like we said, these 5 steps: inspiring the shared vision, modeling the way, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. All those things need to be balanced on a day-to-day basis, because as you go through the chart, you can see what happens when one of the elements is missing. And you can pause the video and look more in depth to see what the result is. If, you're doing 4 out of 5, what could happen and what the impact will be when you're missing one of these practices. So what are the key takeaways? Principals manage schools, leaders inspire people, and great schools develop both. Thank you. We hope this information was helpful. Whether a principal, leader, or both, your role is vital to the education process. And you are appreciated. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time. If you found this video beneficial, feel free to support this channel via PayPal or CashApp. 50 cents, $1, or whatever you like. All support is appreciated. This allows us the means to keep making great content.